gospel this morning is from the Gospel of Luke, 17th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. And as he entered a village, 10 lepers approached him. Keeping their distance, they called out, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." And when he saw them, he said to them, "Go, show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were made clean. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus asked, "Were not 10 made clean? But the other 9, where are they? Was none of them found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Get up, go on your way. Your faith has made you well." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
This is a tricky gospel because if you look at it carefully, we have a miracle story that's going on, and there are 10 lepers. And they approach Jesus from afar because, of course, that is what they had to do. Lepers were not allowed too close to the population. And so it is well known from the Old Testament that when a leper was approached in any way by another person, they had to yell out the words "unclean" to warn that person not to get too close to them. And they lived in terrible situations. And so you can see these 10 people from afar, and they somehow have heard about this Jesus of Nazareth and what he's capable of doing. And so from afar, they yell out, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." And it's one of those miracle stories where Jesus doesn't touch. It's simply a word that is spoken, and he says to the 10, "Well, now go and show yourself to the priest." And this was something you would do to show the priest that you were now cleansed of leprosy, and so you could go back into society. You didn't have to be afraid anymore, and society could accept you. It was almost like coming out of a death and coming back into life. And so the story goes on, and it says that as they're going along, they kind of look at each other, and they say, "Hey, it's gone. 9, keep going," and 1 comes back. So this is a story of gratefulness and graciousness. And so this one man comes back, and of course, as is often the case in Luke's gospel, it's a Samaritan. You ever notice how Samaritans somehow get the point of who Jesus is, but the rest of the crowd doesn't? And so he comes back, and I love this. He praising God with a loud voice. I can only imagine that would be true. And he comes back, and he falls on his knees. He's prostrate, giving thanks to Jesus. And Jesus says, "Wait, weren't 10 made clean? I remember 10. And then he goes on to say, "Was none of them found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" He rubs it into the crowd, most of which, of course, are children of Israel. And then he said, "Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." Now here's the conundrum here. Wait, weren't 10 made well? I thought 10 were made well. And so they keep going, and 1 comes back. And it is the discovery of this one Samaritan that comes back that says, "Something gracious has been done to me, and I have to go back. I have to show gratefulness." And this is kind of the byword of not only this gospel this morning, but it is in every example when Jesus comes into the life of other people. He opens things up, maybe not in a miracle or leprosy or anything like that, but there is a sense in the confrontation with this Jesus of Nazareth, something happens to people, and they are made well, not just physically, as in this case, because after all, the 9 others were cured. So was it their faith, or did something different happen to this Samaritan? So the question arises, was he made well not just physically, but made well in the wholeness of his whole person? because it seems to go beyond just a miracle. 9 get cleansed and they go on. 1 gets cleansed, he comes back, and he has to give thanks. He has to. It's just within him. And somehow the other 9 didn't get it that way. Not that they weren't cured, but only 1, the foreigner, the Samaritan, comes back. Now, this whole issue of gratefulness and graciousness is one of these things that we are called into our daily lives. And oftentimes we have reason to be grateful because we have received graciousness. You like the way the words plays? It really is kind of nice. Now, there is also an issue about graciousness and gratefulness because it has the ability to be on both the light and the dark side. I always remember the German theologian who once said, look up at the moon in the sky, because it's only half that meets the eye, and the other side is a darkness that you'll never see. And graciousness can wander over into that dark side, and I found that to be true this past week when Hurricane Matthew comes up, and we're watching it go up the Florida coast, and it's getting stronger. The lower part of Florida doesn't get it as bad, but once it hits Jacksonville, they're told you had better get out of town. Get far away, because there's going to be flood surges coming in. And Jacksonville is a low-level area. And so thousands of people heed that word, and they start moving inward. And as they are moving inward, they are, of course, trying to stock up on things. They're trying to find gas. They're trying to get out there to find a place to stay. And on, I believe it was CNN, a little report came through of people who stopped at a convenience store because they thought they might want to buy some water. And so they picked up a 12-pack that normally sold at that place for $1.47. Except today it's sold for $30. And one man stopped because he needed gas at a gas station, and what was $2.25 a gallon was now $9.99 a gallon. And the only reason he couldn't put it higher is because the digits on the pump couldn't go beyond 3. Who knows if it was 4, how high it would go. And finally they interviewed a woman with 3 children who found a room at a day's inn at the rate of $50 and stayed overnight and told the next morning by the manager that if she wished to stay that night, coming night, it would be $200. Now here's an example you see of some price gouging by people who really were grateful for a hurricane because it offered them the opportunity to do something for their own greed and gain, except the people upon whom it was perpetrated received no graciousness. So the real question is, what are you grateful for and what are you going to be gracious about? And in a given time you see those who have ulterior motives that would benefit themselves and not other people find that they are grateful for a hurricane. Very grateful. So the issue is, I guess, as we look at this gospel this morning, is to measure our lives within the context of this story and ask ourselves daily, on a daily basis, what indeed are we grateful for? How have we been gracious upon our lives? And to return to this type of story and say, an awful lot of people get an awful lot of good out of what's going on in the world. And I guess we are more fortunate people who, even in our so-called darkness this morning, have a lot on our side, a lot more than other people do. And so when we say that we become grateful for these things, the next question is, do we return that gratefulness with graciousness out into the world? You know, we talked about God's work our hands for the last 2 years. And in what we understand God's graciousness to us is something that we pick out, we throw out into the rest of the world. And how we do our outreach and how we think about ourselves as a community, why we sing, why we come here to worship on any given Sunday. And it's always so easy because you see, those people who gouge those other people, in any other circumstance, might be churchgoers for all I know. But you see, when the opportunity presented itself, perhaps they had not practiced the art of being grateful to an extent that when an opportunity was presented to them, the brokenness of their own bodies, their own souls, their own minds took precedence. So we always have to be on guard, don't we? And this gospel says to us, not everybody comes back under these circumstances after seeing them made clean, not only in body, but perhaps in mind, perhaps in the outward perception of who their brother and sister is in the world. And so that's why we get here every Sunday, for that reminder to say, we are God's children. Indeed we are. But there's a heck of a lot of other children out there who need to be gracious to, who need a reason to be grateful, because in their lives it may not even exist. And when it happens, perhaps that person who experienced that gratefulness rises up and praises God, and then returns that gracious favor to the people that they will live in. It's a really ongoing process, isn't it? Graciousness, gratefulness. A Samaritan that comes back 1 out of 10, and as Jesus says, not only are you made well physically, but you're also made well in a way that returns you to the people to whom you live. It allows you to be an example of further graciousness to those whom you meet in your life. And so may God give us the grace to be grateful, to accept this graciousness from God. And when we are grateful, when we take bread and wine into our hands and receive a gift that is just pure graciousness on God's part, to pick it up, walk out those doors, power or not, and spread it, and just give it away.